20 years ago, as of the creation of this video, on December 17th, 2003, the Return of the King film released, finishing the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings trilogy and immortalizing these films as some of the best movies ever made. The box office for this film is $1.156 billion, while its budget was only $94 million US. It claims a 9 out of 10 on IMDb, a 94% on Rotten Tomatoes, and a 94% on Metacritic, and is to this day the favorite film of so many people, those who boast to be film critics themselves, as well as average movie watchers alike. While I myself claim the whole trilogy to be my favorite movie, as the books they were based on are also sometimes seen truly as one book, if I did have to choose one of the three to call my favorite movie of all time, I would indeed choose The Return of the King as my favorite film. Today, I want to celebrate this film and its contributions to cinema at large, its greatness as a book-to-film adaptation, and especially how it holds up in telling the lore of Tolkien's Middle-earth, since I am, of course, a lore channel. Hey everyone, Yoyston here, and I hope you all are doing well, wherever you are in Middle-earth. I'm so glad to be here today to talk about the legacy of what I consider to be the greatest film of all time, and finish out our 20 years later video essays on Peter Jackson's trilogy. My friends, thank you all so much for joining me today. Let's begin our tale. First, I begin with thanks to the passionate and talented creators of the film, Peter Jackson, Fran Walsh, Philip Aboyans, and so many others who brought this film to life, ending a trilogy of films that has not only withstood the test of time 20 years later, but is also regarded as one of the overall greatest trilogies of films holistically. As someone who enjoys films and video content discussing and criticizing them, I must say that in my view, from what I've seen, the Lord of the Rings trilogy is one of the only movie trilogies in history where all three movies are held in nearly equal and high praise and admiration. Of course, it seems everyone has their favorite of the three, mine being The Return of the King personally, but since so much of the trilogy was shot and crafted together, with reshoots and edits being the main things happening between each movie's release, it feels so much like one cohesive film, both in its storytelling and in its quality. Now, some may try to criticize the Hollywood moments or the amount that was cut from any of the three films, but in my mind, most criticisms of any of these movies fail utterly in comparison with the sheer impressive nature that we got from these films. Yet even if some say they have a least favorite Lord of the Rings movie, I rarely, if ever, hear people claim that movie is The Return of the King. For there's so much to enjoy about this movie, and most people hold this as their favorite from what I can tell. As I write these very words, I'm listening to the song Grace of Undomiel in a compilation of the Return of the King songs, and the music never fails to remind me just how wonderful everything is within this film. The writing, filmmaking, scoring, editing, casting, design, direction, such things have set the standard for movies so high in my mind that they are rarely, if ever, matched by other films even in the last 20 years. The Return of the King continues to capitalize and expand on the best aspects of the previous films, whether it is Gollum's motion capture or miniatures for the giant sets and landscape shots, or battle cinematography and the lighting there, exhilarating moments in large battles, or wonderful sweet and smaller moments and shots through Jackson's directorial style. Again, as I said in the last essay on the Two Towers, I won't claim to be any sort of expert in any of this stuff, but I think the awards, praise, and adoration of these films by the community speak for themselves. I could continue to speak its praises for so long, just as so many videos up until this point, and so many in the years hence, will do. But I must also address this. The film was not without its fair bit of risks, some of which paid off, and others would only be addressed in the extended edition of the film, if at all. For instance, Peter Jackson had to continue the dual narrative established in The Two Towers until the reuniting of the Fellowship near the end of the movie, meaning he had to continue making sense of all the plot lines and characters, while keeping the audience interested and engaged with each one coherently. The Return of the King book has a ton of lore in its own right, as there are actually a few chapters left in the story after the destruction of the One Ring, those which depict the return journey, the scouring of the Shire, and the final journey west for many of the ring-bearers. Yet, in these movies, and in the books as well, but especially in the movies, we are really focused on the Gandalf-Aragorn plots in Rohan and Gondor, as well as the Frodo-Sam-Gollum plots going into Mordor. that was the dual narrative that we had to continue here, and not focus so much on the other stuff that the book touches on. Beyond this, the Gondor chapters also introduce so many interesting characters and dynamics that could not fully be addressed in the film if it was to maintain consistency with all of those plot lines overall. So perhaps more than the other films, The Return of the King, it seems, had the most cut from the book. Now, some of this cut material was actually still filmed and made its way back into the extended edition, but not most of it. And to be honest, online we can still find traces of some scenes that we never even saw in the extended edition either. So hopefully one day we might get those. Since the three movies were mostly building up to the end of Sauron and to the end of the One Ring, there was quite a bit of book lore that was left out. A lot of this lore, of course, is the scouring of the Shire and the return journey and all of that stuff. But again, the movie, at least in the extended edition, came up with an end for Saruman that sure doesn't exactly match how it was in the book, but it allowed the movie to have some sort of ending that was satisfying for Saruman. The Return of the King is renowned for the amount of endings it has, or at least moments that feel like endings. Whether it's after Aragorn's coronation, the sailing of the ship west, or the real ending at Sam's door. To be honest, it doesn't really bother me, of course, as I appreciate how each scene puts another plotline or multiple character arcs to rest, but not all at once. But it is funny, though. This is actually one of the best known legacies of the movie at this point, especially on the internet. People know The Return of the King for the amount of quote-unquote endings it has. Of course, though, again, fans wanted to see other things like the scouring and so forth, but the movie just did not have that sort of time, as those plot lines would have tacked on at least another 30 to 40 minutes to address the scouring in the movie, and it might have even changed the focus and the coherency of both the trilogy and the Return of the King movie itself too much. And while I would love to see it, of course, some version of it, even with these actors or with others, that might have made the pacing of The Return of the King far weirder. Instead, the focus of the film goes far more to the already established characters, and the few that we really meet in this movie, such as Denethor. The filmmakers heavily emphasize the incredible moments of courage and love, as well as those of despair and sorrow, sometimes in ways more or less typical of Hollywood movies, and at other times in very nuanced and individualized ways. For example, there are moments that seem less Tolkienian and more modern, such as Frodo telling Sam to go home, or the Witch King stopping himself from slaying Gandalf at the last moment when he hears the horn of the Rohirrim. But we also have so many Tolkienian moments too, even if they are not actually from Tolkien himself. Pippin and Faramir speaking of Faramir's youth and what it means to have courage, or Pippin and Gandalf speaking about death, or the showing of three eagles that were meant to rescue Frodo, Sam, and Gollum, and so forth. They're undeniably some of the greatest moments in the film, some of the best moments, I would dare say, of all cinema. The moments that really make the movie so top-notch are the speeches and the moments of hope, of course. The lighting of the beacons and the answer of Rohan, Theoden's speech at the Pelennor Fields, Aragorn's speech at the Black Gate, all of that. Those moments have changed my life personally and have inspired me for as long as I can remember. And I know that is the case for so many fans of The Lord of the Rings. There is just so much to say about this film and how it continues to amaze all with moments of battle, quiet monologues and dialogues between characters, incredible cinematography over landscapes and so on and so forth, but I think we all get it. Such things have changed cinema and the standards many of us have for movies generally, and we have the incredible team behind the Lord of the Rings films to thank for that. The astounding end of the Lord of the Rings trilogy paved the way for the creation of the Hobbit trilogy a decade later. Movies that perhaps do not hold up to their predecessors, but films that were good, in my opinion, in their own right. Hopefully you all find some time to rewatch The Return of the King soon and celebrate this 20th anniversary, and find some other legacies about it to comment on below. Well, this wraps up our trilogy of video essays about the 20-year legacies of Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings films. I look forward to continuing to discuss them in many different lore videos and comparative conversations in many videos to come. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed this exploration of the legacies of the Return of the King film 20 years later. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button and share this with a friend. What are your thoughts on all of this? Let me know in the comments below. If you'd like to support the channel, please consider getting some candles from our friends Mythologie Candles, or order some Weta or United Cutlery Lord of the Rings swords, statues, and other replicas from Castle Kon, who does international shipping, and use the code WEST at checkout. And please check out our merch and Patreon. Thanks to our Valor Tier patrons and YouTube members: Peter Shepard, Merton, John Hume, Elizabeth Calvert, Mass Gibbs, Reese Jenkins, Arthur Merlin, Dale Davis, Kingswald Project, Theodore, Moon Viper, Andrew Carlisle, and Zumi. Thank you all so much to all of our patrons and YouTube members. Please subscribe and hit that bell button to join the Men of the West and all of the free peoples today, and I'll see you all again next week with a video on why weren't more One Rings or Silmarils crafted. My friends, thank you all so much for joining me on this adventure. Until the next one.